The contest has begun. A Knock Smackdown. Featuring, in one corner, the Duchess of Industrial Beige, Magnolia. An individual as a mid-range narcissist, vacuous, vapid, incapable of providing any insight or anything of intellectual weight without pinching it from elsewhere. Purveyor of false compassion. Purveyor of sympathy symphonies. An individual whose life has been crushed, yet is a strong and empowered independent feminist who has made her way through the world without the assistance of any men whatsoever. In the other corner, an internationally renowned singer who has sold millions of records and has a quite extraordinary voice. Somebody who has overcome a brutal childhood, a traumatic marriage, apparently decades of racism. Apparently an individual who has regularly identified those who've wronged her and the self-belief that sustains her. Indeed, were it not for the fact that one has some talent and has released records, you might think that I'm describing the same person. Settle in as we now delve into knock-on-knock action. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor, and yes, that dramatic introduction is entirely appropriate, as of course we have the clash between Harry's wife and Mariah Carey. This clash occurred in the second episode of Arsewipes, or as it's formerly known as Archetypes, the bilge fest that has been created by Harry's wife after a long time of sitting with her thumb up her backside. We are, of course, going to find out what went down. I'm not going to indulge in listening to this tripe. I've much better things to do. For example, I noticed that somebody has moved one of my books out of order alphabetically, and I need to put that back in the right place and then torture the offender with an inch of their life. Instead, I'm going to rely on the Mail Online to extract for us the juiciest parts, and that I can then report upon that for you, shining a light upon it all through the prism of the narcissistic dynamic. The article, written by Jack Wright and Jessica Green and Joe Tweedy and Claire Terrell, tells us as follows. Note, such is the execrable nonsense that pours out of Harry's wife's mouth that 4 people have to take it in shifts to listen to it. Clearly, the Mail Online takes the health and safety of its employees very seriously, not wanting to overexpose them to such traumatic material as listening to Harry's wife's syrupy tones. The headline reads, Harry's wife was given a lesson on star power. PR guru says Duchess discovered who was the power in the room during discussion that saw Mariah Carey brand her a diva in second Arsewipes podcast after Serena Williams barely got a word in last week. Harry's wife met her match in diva pop star Mariah Carey and would have discovered who was the power in the room during her interview with the music legend for the second episode of her Archetypes Spotify podcast, PR Gurus have told Mail Online today. The Duchess of Sussex dropped another string of truth bombs, dropping the narc bomb, form of manipulation, in a latest episode released today, including that she was only treated like a black woman for the first time when she began dating Prince Harry, and that things really shifted for her after she entered royal life. Well, perhaps it was that she only started acting like a black woman when she realised through her narcissism that she could leverage it, and that previously she'd always held herself out as being white. But during her interview with Mariah, the former Suits star was branded a diva by Ms. Carey, before the singer quickly reassured her that she was referring to her posture, her clothing, and her gorgeous ensembles, and not her personality, the Duchess claimed. Speaking to Mail Online today, one PR expert suggested that the Duchess would have met her match in Mariah, who has her own diva reputation, and would have given a lesson on star power. Of course, this PR guru, Mark Borkowski, stated, "She has met the diva. Harry's wife would have discovered who was the power in the room. Mariah and her people will have given Harry's wife a lesson on star power." Indeed, because although Mariah Carey is also one of our brethren, she at least has some talent. She can sing. She can perform. I'm not entirely certain as to her songwriting credentials. I think she must have some involvement in that. But the fact is she does have some talent. You can tell that she can sing, and she's a decent enough performer. Her music isn't to my particular taste, but it is to many people's. And, of course, every Christmas, we're always treated to All I Want for Christmas Is You, which is certainly very much an earworm tune. She is the type of narcissist that has talent, and her narcissism has created this diva reputation. This is once again an instance whereby there's certain behaviours, being demanding, having very particular ways of wanting to do things, being very controlling, is described as acting as a diva, where in actual fact people are missing the narcissism that is evident. However, in this instance, because of the nature of her narcissism, it comes up against Harry's wife's narcissism, and we have a clash, with both of them, of course, seeking to assert control over the other and draw fuel from them. Let's continue with the article. Rochelle White added, "Not everyone is comfortable with words that people use against them like diva. But I feel Harry's wife listened and took some of what Mariah had to say on board. Rochelle White, you don't understand narcissists." Harry's wife and Mariah talked about the complexities surrounding the word diva and the negative connotations associated with it before Ms. Carey accused the Duchess of being a diva. Such an accusation is the use of the truth, because she does engage in diva behaviours. It also is provocative, and Mariah Carey's own narcissism utilised that for the purposes of asserting control over Harry's wife by devaluing her with this observation, and then seeking to elicit a response from her to demonstrate that she was brought under control and to provide fuel. Returning to the article, I think that's really important for people to remember that there might be this persona, and yes, the diva thing, we can play into, said Harry's wife during the podcast, before adding, "It's not something I connect to." Here, Harry's wife's narcissism recognises that being called a diva has a negative connotation, and therefore a negative connotation is a threat to the control of the narcissist. It's similar to a narcissist being accused of being a narcissist. It has a negative stigmatic quality to it. And here, when the use of the word diva is used, Harry's wife narcissism says, "Well, you're not a diva, Harry's wife. We all know that you're not. You're a kind, empathic bananitarian who's there to help people throughout the world to become better, more organic, authentic selves through providing them with inspirational messages written using a Sharpie on a banana." Harry's wife narcissism does not allow her to accept that she is a diva, and therefore immediately distances her from such an observation. Returning to the article, however, Mariah was quick to disagree with the Duchess, insisting, "You give us diva moments sometimes, Harry's wife. Don't even act like you don't." Meow. Table of milk for the songstress. So, in that instance, she picks up on Harry's wife's attempt to distance herself from the title and uses it against her. It is a provocation. It is done to assert control, although Mariah Carey doesn't realise that's the true purpose of what she's doing. Harry's wife then later claimed in her podcast that Mariah was complimenting her by calling her a diva, adding, "My fangirling was tempered today. I kind of think she could tell, but that aside, it was all going swimmingly, really well, until that moment happened, which I don't know about you, but it stopped me in my tracks. When she called me a diva, you couldn't see me. obviously, but I started to sweat a little bit and started squirming in my chair in this quiet revolt, like, wait, no, what? How could you? That's not true. Why would you say that? Notice that she didn't turn round and immediately say to Mariah Carey, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm not a diva. And then launch herself from the chair, howling like a banshee, grabbing the tresses of Mariah Carey, her thumbs trying to gouge out her eyes, and saying, take it back, say I'm not a diva. Her narcissism did not direct her to assert control in that way. She didn't even say, well, no, that's not right. Why are you saying that I'm a diva? In that instance, presumably because her narcissism recognised that it wouldn't get anywhere with Mariah Carey, who would probably just sit there and keep pointing and going, diva, 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 over and over, and then perhaps singing it in some falsetto. Who knows? Harry's wife's narcissism wasn't able to deal with it directly. So what she had to do, as she's done in many instances, which we've seen in the past, she can't deal with it indirectly at the time. What she then does is she sits there and swallows it. But in her mind, she's thinking, you effing bitch, how dare you say that about me? I'm not a diva. And thus her narcissism causes her to jettison it in her own mind. Thereafter, of course, somebody, I suspect, has mentioned to her about the instance of being called a diva and has suggested you might want to address that. Thus, that brings up the threat to control again at a later juncture. Here, because Mariah Carey isn't there, and remember, Harry's wife is a cowardly mid-ranger, her narcissism deems she can assert control over Mariah Carey, a non-intimate secondary source in her fuel matrix, by revising history and doling out a pity play. So basically she says, she was complimenting me. She wasn't. She was calling out her behaviours quite accurately. But Harry's wife's narcissism has caused her to believe that what was actually going on was that it was a compliment. And in the circumstances, she was able then to deal with that by saying, oh, it wasn't an insult. She didn't really mean it in a nasty way. She of course, meant it as a compliment because we're besties. And at the same time, she then doles out a pity play by saying, I started to sweat a little bit and I was squirming in my chair. It's possible that her narcissism did cause her to feel anxious, but her revealing this at a later juncture is part of the pity play to allow people to be sympathetic and go, oh, Pinocchio, you're not a diva at all. And thus she gains an assertion of control indirectly over Mariah Carey. Returning to the article, my mind was genuinely just spinning with that nonsense she must have read or clicked on to make her say that. And I just kept thinking in that moment, was my girl crush coming to a quick demise? Does she actually not see me? Here, revision of history, but also provocation. Cowardly mid-ranger, she doesn't say it to Mariah Carey. Oh, actually, with you saying that to me, my fangirl crush on you is coming to an end. Oh no. Her cowardly narcissism causes her to say it when Carey's not there. Indirect assertion of control. Smearing. She then continues, so she must have felt my nervous laughter, and you would have all heard it too, and she jumped straight in to make sure I was crystal clear when she said diva. She was talking about the way that I dress, the posture, the clothing, the quote, unquote fabulousness, and she sees it. She meant diva as a compliment, but I heard it as a dig. I heard it as weird diva as I think of it, but in that moment, as she explained to me, she meant it as chic, as aspirational, and how one very changed word can mean something different for each of us. It's mind-blowing to me. Revision of history, smearing, and, of course, indirect assertion of control. We all know that Harry's wife is like the caterpillar in, or I think it's actually Humpty Dumpty, isn't it, in Alice Through the Looking Glass, that when she says a word, she means it what she wants it to mean. Take, for example, her use of guttural. Yet there's more. Of course, continuing with one of her monologues and word salads, Harry's wife continued, it actually made me realise, and in these episodes, as I've opened the door for conversations surrounding archetypes, grandiosity, all about me, that try to hold us back, what I hadn't considered is that for some, reclaiming the words is what they feel will propel us forward. Word salad. Buckingham Palace were braced for more bombshells hurled by Harry's wife after yesterday's interview, with the cut threatened to deepen Harry's wife and Harry's rift with the Windsors. Harry's wife and Mariah's discussion about being mixed race came after Harry's wife claimed she didn't want her children photographed because of racism. She said yesterday, "Why would I give the very people that are calling my children the N-word a photo of my child before I can share it with the people that love my child? You tell me how that makes sense and then I'll play that game." In the podcast, Mariah Carey told Harry's wife about her childhood, saying, "I didn't fit in. It would be more of the black area of town, or then you could be where my mom chose to live, where the more white neighbourhoods, and I didn't fit in anywhere at all." Harry's wife replied, "Yeah, I understand that. Character trait acquisition, fake compassion." Carey described how she was teased by a boy at school for having only 3 shirts and wearing them on rotation, adding, "It was true, pity play." The singer added, "In a world where you're the mixed kind of a full-on white kid of a full-on white neighbourhood, that's what you get." The Duchess replies, "This is part of why when I was putting this conversation together, I had to talk to you. Of course I had to talk to you. You were so formative for me." What? Representation matters so much. Surprised she didn't just jump up and go, "Represents." Mariah Carey and the Duchess of Sussex compared stories about dealing with their hair when younger. Wow, what the world really needs at the moment, isn't it? Harry's wife said on the podcast, "Because my hair is so curly and it's so thick, I just remember as a child, because my mum's black, and so my grandma Jeanette would do my hair, she'd go, 'Just hold on to the sink.' And I would grip my little hands on both sides, so you would have no luxury of being tender-headed, because she would take the brush and just go whoosh, whoosh." Absolutely fucking fascinating. Bringing up the past anodyne recollection from the Duchess of Industrial Beige. Titled "The Duality of Diva" with Mariah Carey, Harry's wife talks with the pop superstar about the complexities surrounding the diva and the negative connotations associated with the word. Carey tells Harry's wife, "I'm MC, you can call me Mimi, you can call me Mariah, whatever you want." The Duchess began the conversation by asking the name of Carey's dogs, Cha-Cha and Muttley P. Gore Jackson. Then the Daily Mail article reverts to the previous article, the previous podcast, and then references, of course, the Cut magazine, which I am dealing with in separate videos. And, of course, this podcast is yet more utter beige tripe, but the fact is that Harry's wife was devalued by Mariah Carey, and her cowardly mid-range ways meant that she wasn't able to respond in a fashion to enable her to assert control directly. Her narcissism led her to respond in an indirect fashion. There's more about this. The Mail explains, Harry's wife was called a diva by Mariah Carey in the 2nd episode of her Archetypes podcast on Spotify. The Duchess of Sussex, 41, admitted she laughed nervously and was sitting in quiet revolt. Yeah, ooh, aren't you big? Worrying that her girl crush on the pop star was coming to a quick demise. Provocation, after the 53-year-old claimed Harry's wife had diva moments. Mariah was quick to reassure Harry's wife that she was referring to her posture, her clothing, her gorgeous ensembles, according to the Duchess, revision of history, who confessed she first thought her guest was making a dig. The Duchess called on the superstar singer to support her Archetype show following her friend Serena Williams' episode last week. This week's, which was released today, i.e. yesterday when this article was written, is called The Duality of Diva with Mariah Carey. Mother of two, Harry's wife and the American singer talk about the complexities surrounding the word diva and the negative connotations associated with it. I think that's really important for people to remember that there might be this persona, and yes, the diva thing we can play into, said Harry's wife during the podcast, before adding, it's not something I connect to. However, Mariah was quick to disagree with the Duchess, insisting you give us diva moments sometimes Harry's wife don't even act like. What kind of diva moments do I give you? Rejection. Attempt to assert control, a shocked Harry's wife replied, to which the singer said, don't act like, before the Duchess questioned, can you see me right now? It's also the visual. It's the visual, Mariah explained. A lot of it's the look. Let's pretend that you weren't so beautiful and didn't have the whole thing and didn't often have gorgeous ensembles. You wouldn't maybe get as much diva. I don't care. I'm like, when I can, I'm going to give you diva, she added, while Harry's wife said, that's the thing. I associate it differently. Here, Carey, of course, is offering backhanded compliments with regard to what she's stating about her by making it seem like she wasn't having a dig, by complimenting her about her beauty and her gorgeous ensembles, when in actual fact all she's doing is deflecting from the attempt to nullify the threat to control. "Oh man, I love it. She is so Mariah," commented the Duchess following the segment, which the singer also insisted, "I was playing with you when I said that," seemingly referring to her diva comment. Again, that's deflecting from what was really going on, which it was a provocation and a devaluation designed by Carey's instinctive narcissism to assert control over her and draw fuel. It then continues by repeating what I've told you already, and I see no need to go into that any further. This section, of course, demonstrates that she attempted briefly to assert control directly, but failed, and therefore had to do so indirectly at a later segment in the podcast. Here, two narcissists collided, and one successfully landed a blow on the other. Although Harry's wife dealt with the threat to control in the moment, she attempted to do so directly, failed, then had to stay in a position of withdrawal, but then later, through partially the revision of history and doling out a pity play, indirectly asserted control over Carey. And this was a good example of the interaction between two narcissists and how one has a dig and then makes it seem like that she hasn't, passive-aggressive behaviours, and the other is unable to respond and acts genuinely horrified because her narcissism causes her to feel that way. All in all, of course, it's more anodyne beige nonsense that's been spouted by Harry's wife, but gives you another opportunity to understand narcissism in action. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.